Okay. Right. So what you're going to see is kind of what it's merging of a little bit of two things. Last November, did a presentation at Temkin Corporation back in Ohio. A little bit of our story, and I'm continuing to support our story with this mix. But also what we went through earlier this year with board approval and board of directors approval, and what the leadership team kind of worked its way through. So giving everybody kind of the objectives of what we're doing this year. Um, for me, next slide. So for me, this is what sparked the journey for me. My grandfather, out to the right, some of you visited the USS Missouri in 2000. Yeah, boarded it, and I saw my grandfather become a holy man after losing my family. That's another 70 years, 60, 70 years. He had an opportunity to know my kids. Those are two children there. But that's really what triggered my journey and connection with the ship here. Um, and then spent the first 11 years volunteering, about 12 years volunteering. About 10 of those years learning the whole process, or 9 of those years learning the whole process of how to get a historic ship. I think it's important to notate for everybody in the room that a historic ship is not preserved because necessarily the Navy wants to preserve the ship. I think that's something to be clear. This is a disposal method of things that are no longer of value in the United States Navy. Why they donate these to them? They dispose of them. And the option to dispose is to donate it, strip it, or take it. For many, many years, donating it was thought to be the most cost-effective option until we've seen in the last 20 years that that may not have been the most cost-effective option with things like Texas and some of the other issues that they have tied to it. We may, frankly, probably will be the last ship ever donated in the Navy, from the Navy. If you pay attention to the Oliver and Hazard Harry class frigate, the Erie, I think it was the Erie, that fell through just last month. It's really pretty challenging to be able to fulfill the application criteria. The challenges that I think the historic ships are facing, and how do you address those challenges, and a lot of those are societal as well, as we're seeing generations change and interests change, and how do you adapt and address those while continuing to remain sustainable and viable. Prior to this point, just FYI, for those of you that may not know, my background is an entrepreneur. I've started businesses, I've sold businesses, when they truly take on challenges and find ways to address challenges. So adopting it over to this passion project, which is probably the craziest thing I've ever been involved in. Next slide. This is Sassoon Bay. At first, I saw the ship come into Sassoon Bay. I think it was 2001. I remember moving right. Oh, it's like yeah. Oh, it's cool. Okay. When it first came in 2001, I was on the USS Potomac when it came in, and then we started speccing in about 2005, 4 or 5, where we started to get to know the ship and some of the challenges we would have, and as well as the cathodic protection. She had some refurbishment done in 2006 by the Navy. A lot of some of the directors were wide open. There was not canvas over them. Birds were living in them. They were pooping everywhere. And there was quite a few leak issues because there was water pooling in decks because there was no way for them to drain. So we actually drilled holes in the decks. If those ops ever see little drill bit holes in the decks, that was actually us in about 2006 that drilled those, just to try to get the water from pooling up there. Navy put a little bit of money in it. The Navy decided they tried some track stacking in about 2001 back aft. The tracks failed miserably. By 2004, it was buckled. It was really in bad shape. That was a little cutout in the fantail. And then they also replaced the wood up on O2 level with Hart Douglas fir. I won't say who did that, but I know who did it. And that also has buckled, as you know well, where it caused leak issues as well. So that was not a sustainable solution either. So anyways, we look at all of those challenges. How do you sustain a historic ship? How do you maintain a historic ship? How do you make sure you remain a viable entity and transition with the ages in society? Because ultimately, I think we all agree that we would rather not see the ship sail off in the next 10 or 20 years and become a scrap or sink here. Anybody disagree with me here? It does. So how we do that is really the challenge in what we do. So that formulates where we go. And we formulated kind of the first 12 years that we bounced around. Next slide. It's back in my fat days. How many of you remember me in my fat days? I got up to about 365 pounds. When we did inspections in 2004, 5, 6, all the way till 2012, 13. I was that large, could not get through scuttles. They used to call them sausage stuffers. But really, it came down to a journey about veterans for me. It came down to seeing how my grandfather was revitalized and what he did, and how even enriching how the volunteer corps came in and what they did to save the ship, and how many of you continue to save the ship today. Now we all transition and change as people. I had a big change, transition in my years as I lost weight and dealt with many different issues, anxiety, depression, mental health, and different issues, and became a different person today than I was 2 years ago. So I encourage, one of the things I've learned in this journey, 2 years ago, I wasn't so accepting of people's flaws and personality flaws. Today I'm very accepting of them. So I encourage everybody to accept each other for their positives and negatives, because we are human at the end of the day. We can all help each other become successful, but also enjoy our journey associated with the ship, because every one of us here choose to be here. We're not forced to be here. So it's important that we enjoy that journey and remember why we're here. Then next slide. So we created a strategic plan that pointed to 2035 last year. I think I briefed some folks on that. You may have seen it. And so how do we get there? There's 3 areas that we're looking at in 2035. Is to be the nation's museum in the future, to exemplify functional excellence, and to be a people first culture. And so everything we do is kind of pushed on that path forward. Next slide. So when we looked at last year, how do we realign our programs? How do we become more focused? How do we drill it in? And so we watched some of these metrics. These are some of the metrics that we watched in the fourth quarter. Our attendance is 8.6% down. That continues down actually last month. We're seeing kind of a record low year at this point. And what may drive that? Sometimes rain may drive that. Some of the LA tourism market is driving that. California is investing several $1 million in trying to get people back to California. So the California tourism market took a kind of a different direction in 4 years. And you also look at what an experience. At 12 years, we've had kind of the same static experience. So how do we reinvent our experience to change the number? I think blank owners is a big base. That's the base of supporters that may know about the ship. Those are 2 different chunks, and I'll show when we get in here what that means. But I think overall, you can see kind of the add-on conversions. The tour team's doing pretty good. Donation revenue is up about 236%. Mission revenue with add-on tours is about 11.33%. Volunteer participation at 5.6%. For the ops team, 45 feet of hold footage. The goal is 185 feet a year. We've missed it 2 years in a row. We miss it for probably 4 or 5 or 10 more years, we're going to have some problems. And so I think it's important that we really kind of focus on that number and try to get up into 180 foot range and to the USS Texas. So that's an important number. About 180 to 185 feet a year is really what we need to achieve. And right now we're kind of tracking behind on the side. You see some of our newsletter side and veteran support. Next slide. So I'm trying to think what this is. Oh, vision. Push the button to pop up vision mission. So we went through this exercise last year. The vision is to inspire global awareness of freedom of the seas. And the mission is to ignite curiosity, connect communities, and enhance understanding of America's role in maritime peace and prosperity. I think that's really important. How many people in this room know what the Navy does? All right, you're about 7% of them. And I think that's important to notate. This museum's not about you or the 7% of them. It's about the 93%. And that's what we need to be able to efficient on the 3%. Next slide. And how do we do that? How do we achieve that? We did have three categories. We ignite curiosity, as you see in our mission, with programs that are uniquely Los Angeles, high impact, high visibility. We're not doing programs just for the heck of it. We did them for the first 12 years. I think we're bringing everybody out. In fact, we started things, we ended things. People thought, why did they put their money into it or their time? It was not very smart of us because it didn't move that ball forward. We do programs that are socially connected. While we promote the maritime industry, their sea services and post-service careers in connecting communities. We do that through connecting leadership, through leadership programs, strengthen our networks, which those networks are core to everything we do in every pillar, education, veterans, and community. And then we bridge those interests. How do we bring together with mutual interests, whether you are a transitioning military vet, you're current, you transition, you're a first responder, a public servant official, a private sector employer, a retired individual, how do we bridge those interests? That's important. It's always looking to bridge those interests so we find the collective alignment between each other. And I think that's important on the crew as well. To promote the valued relationships, cross-sector or cross-career understanding of sea services. And then enhance understanding with programs for public focus, mutual interest content, broadly messaged, that's important, that have a large message tied to them to promote freedom to seas or sea services in the LA waterfront right here on the waterfront. All ships ride with a, what is it called? All ships ride with a rising sun. And so the whole concept is with a successful waterfront, we see everything come up. Next slide. So where do we go in 2024 accomplishments? We saw a 25% revenue growth overall, with 15% expense growth, making it the best year yet. Stronger alignment in messaging and culture. We're focusing on where our core success is and how we're going to give them core success. I know there's a lot of squirrels that look like a lot of fun. First to tell you, I chase every squirrel that comes running across my path. But we need to stop doing that as an organization because that's not sustainable. Progress on major projects, the Freedom of the Seas Pavilion, 70% funded. The National Museum Phase 1 is 50% funded. The park is less than 5% funded at this point. And then we increased our capacity. Increased capacity is not necessarily people on the tour. Capacity is the ability through knowledge, resources, training. That increases capacity, especially when you look at developing staff. More knowledge, makes it so you can shortcut times and become more efficient at what you're doing. And so increase our capacity through reduced deferred expenses, as well as crew development and delegation. So we did pick up in the reduced deferred expenses. We still have quite a few deferred expenses across the organization through almost every funding, but less than we had last year. I will tell you, every department in this organization is always fighting for more resources. Every single department is funded for more resources. And I hear it and we kind of move it like a clock. What we do is, okay, where do we put the next investment in the next resource side of it? And they are strategic investments. I want to be clear on some of that. They are strategic investments in what we do. For 2019, I'll give you an idea. Next slide. I don't know what's in the next slide. So to give you a context of 2019, we opened in 2012, we got to 2019, and we were very stagnant. We had years that were sometimes 3.5 million, some years that were $4 million in revenue, back to $3.7 million in revenue, up to 4.1 million, down to 3.5. We were a very, very stagnant organization. We were not on a path towards success, I hate to admit it. And we made a decision in late 2019 to invest differently, invest in cash flow producing assets, invest in people, and start figuring out how we can become stronger in those areas. COVID hit us, which was not great in the beginning. The first 5 weeks, we were lucky we made it through 5 weeks, but we had a lot of blessings that came our way. And very innovative in restructuring some of our finances and finding money and having donors that supported us. And so we were very thankful on that run, as well as volunteers that continue to show up despite the risk. And so we were blessed in that run. So I'll give you an idea of where we are in 2024. I don't know if the number was up there, but we did about $8.2 million revenue in 2024. So almost double the size from 2019 to 24. And we'll continue to see pretty pretty decent growth into the side of things because we're investing in the right places. We can choose to invest in the wrong places, but really when you invest in cash flow producing assets and increase the cash flow and increase the funding that comes in, and you focus in those areas that have success, then that drives excess revenue that can fill those gaps in those departments that are not revenue generators. I think that's important to notate. If you throw all your money at non-revenue generating departments, then it's just going to be a downward spiral. So you have to balance it. You generate revenue, what's excess, you pull in, you feed it over to the other departments, and you continue to feed it for efficiencies. So every department right now is going through a pretty significant growth phase with those investments in. I wake up every day wondering, oh my gosh, when's this going to stop? When's the investments, when is it going to catch up? We keep investing more and more and more. I feel like we're spending like a drunken sailor sometimes. And somehow every month we come out behind. So I'm happy to see it. And that's all a testament to your guys' work because this one. So 2024 challenges, 8.5% decrease in attendance. HR related challenges and gaps in strategic thinking. There wasn't some of the alignment across the management team wasn't there, and thinking through where we were going and how we're going to be aligned in achieving that. And we'll go into the HR related challenges. There was fairly significant ones throughout the year, and we have I don't want to use the word eliminated them, but we all but eliminated them at this point. Misalignment in programs and marketing innovation. And I think that's really important when we start to look at 2025, and I'll talk about how we're going to realign some of that. But when you look at education, veterans, and community, they all were standalone pillars and they didn't necessarily align with each other. And that was not an efficient use of resources, and we became a very siloed organization. So, and then organizational growth was outpacing the crew capacity. And once the capacity could be knowledge, number of people, resources available, so on and so forth. Next slide. By the way, that's an ad. Also, misalignment, go back one. So that's an ad to the right. And that's not the best thing for a civilian audience, to be honest with you, because I don't know if you've never known anything about a shed 45,000 tons of history, doesn't mean a lot to you probably. And so we're starting to realign a lot of those too in that message. Next slide. So 2025 focus area, we're going to focus on enhancing participant-driven experiences, advancing career pathways, programs, and strengthening capacity through efficiency and strategic investments. If you look at the on the right, the Cal State Fullerton report for 2024, visitors have an average rating of 4.5. 60% of our visitors are tourists, 40% are residents, 7.14% of them are veterans, and 92.86% are civilians. And you can see the age group, 85.72% is 18 to 65, and 7.14 is under 18. Economic impact, we've seen an increase of 10x since 2022 with an estimate between 13 million and 22 million. Below is the visitor interest by generation. I'm sure I can read it on this map, but you can see who's interested based on generation ship history. The military side, I can't even read it on there, but it's kind of a chart that tells you where the interests lie and what different generations interest in. So doing this data and survey results helps drive where our focus may be and what we need to achieve. Next slide. Looking ahead, our vision for 2025. So future 2035, I mentioned this, we are the nation's museum of the future. We're a people first culture and we exemplify professional excellence. In our 2025 objectives, we're going to be purpose driven, community focused, transformation projected to drive an increase, 10% increase in revenue and 6% increase in expenses. We're going to do that through participant driven experiences. Anybody know what participant driven experiences is, by the way? Do you have a slide in here, Miranda, on that? No, I don't. Okay. No, I do. Next slide is on it, so I'll go into it. Then let's go back one slide. Development activities, we're going to generate revenue through earned revenue growth. Advancing pathways, programs, capacity building process and efficiency, facilities, maintenance, and operations, with a theme of celebrating the 250 years of the Surface Navy and the Navy. We're going to look at next year at the 250 years of America, as well as the Call to Maritime Service. Anybody know about the nation's call to the Maritime Service that's out there at this point? It's a big nation's call to maritime service to be able to increase the nation's capacity to build ships, man ships, so on and so forth. Right now, we can't even get, we don't have enough merchant marine to man our or sea ships, just on the merchant mariner side of things. In fact, Cal State, Vallejo, up that direction, the maritime school for Cal State, from what I understand, is merging with another college at this point. Doesn't have government to maintain itself. That's not very good for a nation. It's an island nation, to be honest with you. And there's kind of a bigger disconnect than we've ever seen. Next slide. Participant-driven experiences. I'm sure I'm talking to a lot of folks that look at museums as artifacts in glass cases, because that's kind of the art museums I grew up with. I think it's important to notate some conversations we had with the World War II Museum in New Orleans. Everybody knows what museum that is, I think. All right, so it started out as the Higgins Boat Museum. They realized it was such a small focus that they were going to fail as the Higgins Boat Museum, so they became the D-Day Museum to have a bigger message. They realized that was still not big enough, so they went and got a congressional designation called the National World War II Museum. In the middle of that, Hurricane Katrina happened and grabbed a lot of attention to New Orleans. And they also had some very influential people involved with them, Pete Wilson, Governor Pete Wilson, Tom Hanks, and Stephen Ambrose. But they also realized that they had a sweet spot. With the Greatest Generation, they had a sweet spot where it was only going to last about 10 years and they were going to eventually fail. And so what were they going to do? And how were they going to do that? So they drove quick and hard, built the experiences that they have, and built a hotel and a conference center that will forever fund the museum. So now they have been far more successful than they actually planned to be. But all you have to do is look back at some of the World War II or World War I museums. And if you've been to DC and seen the World War I memorial that's stuck behind trees with moss growing all over it and nobody's paid attention to for a lot of years. And you see how society changes and interest changes and generations get further away. It's not something that we can somehow resolve how society becomes different. I'm sorry to say that none of us are that good at resolving how people change over generations, but we need to adapt. And so we're going to make investments in National Museum Phase 1, opening in October 2025, upgraded immersive experiences and interactive engagement focused on freedom to seize to expand our reach. We're going to focus on program development, implementation, support, sales, and marketing efforts. We're looking at about an estimated 2.8 million in capital improvements with 1.8 million by a contractor and about $1 million by us. Our goal is to see an increase in attendance and reviews. Hopefully a 2x increase in attendance is our objective in that. And my little chart to the right is we're going to go from the veterans, the Battleship aficionados, and Iowans. That's about 7% of the audience, that little circle down there. And we're going to try to reach 333 million people. We're going to try to reach the entire audience. That's my goal, is try to make a story that's interesting to that group of people. How do you do that? And what is a participant-driven experience? I think we're all used to talking at people. When any of us give tours, we talk at people. We tell them what that is. Oh, this is this is that, this is X, Y, Z, this is how it was done. That is talking at people. Finding a way to make people feel as if they're part of the story is a challenge. And when you look at that, and you look at museums across the nation, you look at themed entertainment, that's what's called themed entertainment, and those experiences like at Disneyland, Disney World, Universal, and the themed entertainment side of things. What they do is they put somebody as if they're actually part of that story. And when you start to drill into that storytelling side of things, is my map in here? Yeah, next slide, really next slide. When you start to go into the storytelling and actually refining into how a story is told and what that means. And the story is told, and we went through this in the management meetings last week, but a story, when you're creating a themed entertainment, a story is usually told with what somebody is well known and for different phrases of it, and didn't realize one of them was completely inappropriate until 3 months later. So it dawned on me, somebody used a non-inappropriate one. 3 sparklers in a firework. Okay, so 3 sparklers in the firework are literally 3 touch points. A little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and then big. And that's big wow. And then a little bit of this, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of this. Okay, that's how a story is told. If you create 25 wow moments and no touch points, you really didn't get any. You create 25 touch points and no wow moments, you still didn't get any. So how do you do that? And so I looked at that and thought, gosh, when you look at that lens, and you look at the lens that Disney or another museum does, and what they do is they build a building, okay? They build a building, they create a stage, and then they program the stage. So you build a building, and then you build the USS Constitution in the building in phases, right? That's what everybody does. You go to Disneyland, you build a giant industrial building like a stage, and then you program it with Rise of the Resistance for Star Wars or whatever ride you do. What if you already have the stage and you already have the environment? Then all you need to do at that point is create the content, right? We already have the environment, we already have the stage, we just have to create the content. And so how do you create a content that makes somebody feel as if they're in storytelling fashion? So when you look in that lens and you realize that for 12 years, and frankly, I mean, let's just do this for 12 years, we have boarded people up the forward gangway, stuck them in front of the turret and gone, and then we went, coach. So we didn't build up to the bang. We gave the bang right up front, and then we just fell down from there. That's not great storytelling. I mean, and this is not something that I did, by the way. I'm going to be clear. This is the way the industry works. This is how people get engaged in the experiences. And so when you look at that, you go, how do you engage somebody in the experience? And how do we create, when you hear the National Museum of the Surface Navy, how do you create something that's not just the National Museum of the Surface Navy, but merges into everything we do so you don't have two separate experiences and two separate things? How do we create them? And how do we create a participant-driven experience? Well, in the Life of the Sailor experience, you start out down in, you actually start out, it's really weird. I mean, for civilians, they get aboard the ship, they've never seen it, they've never been aboard a ship, and they're a little confused. They're going to land in the second deck museum space, and probably the first thing they're going to see is a pile of TVs. Now, I know everybody in this room is going to have little TVs, fucking weird things you're even thinking of. It's going to be a pile of TVs from about 80 to 100 years, console TV on the bottom, rebuilt with an LED screen in it, try to make it as real as we can. The whole team, the team working on it. And you build that pile of TVs up to an iPad, and you feed content on it of every movie or video that, not every, but movies and videos that sailors may have been seen over the past 100 years. When a civilian comes aboard, they're confused in the ship, they've never been aboard a ship, it's a new face, they don't know what they're looking at, they have no idea what's happening. I think all of us have felt that on a ship we've never been on before. And then you see this pile of TVs and you go, what the heck is this pile of TVs doing here? And then you look at the screen and it's something you recognize because you watched it on TV or you watched it in the movie theater. And now you have a familiarity. You're like, okay, I'm really confused. And it looks familiar, but what am I doing? So that kicks it off. It makes somebody question, but we're going to bring them through an entire experience. We're going to bring them down to the third deck. We're going to drop them right in the middle of the third deck. And the first thing they're going to see is what's my rate? It's called What's My Rate? Mike Wynn is actually aligned with our military veterans pillar. What's my rate is, if you're a welder, what are you in the Navy? You're an HT. If you're an electrician in the civilian world, what are you in the Navy? And we start matching, if you're a police officer, what are you in the Navy? You're an MA. We start matching that up and what's my rate, because people are going to go, oh my God, my job really actually exists in the Navy. I had no idea. I didn't realize that people in the Navy are the same as me. My job exists. You go into there, you go into boot camp, we're immersing them into boot camp. You go through PEDOs, then you go to the boot camp, you're taught how to fight fires in the ship, you're taught how to moor a ship, you're taught the marksmanship, and then you graduate, and then you go into the Great Ships Gallery, which some of you may have seen down a sample down there, and you're going to have to see about 400 ships on a 60-foot wall, floor to ceiling. Acrylic ships that are nothing more than see-through acrylic, but the LED screen, LED panel wall behind that is completely programmable with endless content that we could program for the next 15 to 20 years. So as, by the way, boot camp has LEDs that we can program. Every space, it's not all technology heavy, it's the immersive environment. In the boot camp, the instructors are actually going to be teaching you. They're not going to be like, well, at boot camp, we do X, Y, Z. They're actually going to be telling you what you're doing. Okay? They're going to be teaching you. You go through great ships, then you're going to end up in the shipyard. going to be another environment that feels like a shipyard, and then we end up in a ship cutaway where you get to watch sailors run around, and eventually we will build that completely out. We'll build that completely out where you can see a ship move through different phases, different stages of its life. You know, flight quarters, general quarters, so on and so forth. After you exit from there, you go into a mission assignment where you're going to get assigned a mission that will be aligned with something historic, like Maersk Alabama, maybe the first mission that somebody assigns you. And you're going to go on what feels like a skiff, but it's not really a skiff. But it feels like a skiff. Little clocks ticking down and everything. You're getting mission assignment. So when you leave that, you're going on a tour experience of the ship, and we can endlessly program it forever. Or you can go on career tracks and you can be a career sailor in a certain career, what that may be, which is the bottom part. So it gives us an opportunity to connect while they're there. When they leave down below, they're now going to understand what a mooring pit is. With mooring lines, they're going to understand what a fire valve is and what the fire lines are. They're going to actually have a concept of what they're looking at. And we'll be able to have a career counselor to where we and maybe take people through career transition, so the self-training option with touchscreens programs, and we'll see different areas come along to the show. Also come along with what we call cutaway sailors, which we're going to release that campaign soon. So if you ever envisioned yourself being in a museum, you'll have an opportunity to be a cutaway sailor. You're just going to need either a full body shot, a photo if you want to sponsor yourself in the museum, or if you only have a headshot of you as a sailor, then we will superimpose it on another sailor. But I can't tell you what that sailor would look like, so you can want to amplify whether you want to be buff, short, tall, skinny. Next one. So the development fundraising side, which Kyle Lobby is right over here. The goal this year is to secure 100% funds for the Freedom of Seas Pavilion Resilience Center. We were just talking about maybe adding Liberty Point into that, or Freedom Plaza, or whatever we end up calling it, which is the pier side over by the building. National Museum Phase 1. LA Fleet Week, of course. Last year we lost a little bit of money on Fleet Week. This year I don't want to lose money on Fleet Week. MBA and Education Pathways, and what's called LADRRC, which is the Early Disaster Resilience and Recovery Collective. And by the way, what does that all mean? This network of the LADRRC is the private and public sector that supports disaster resiliency and recovery. It's businesses, it is government agencies, it's the military. By the way, those are the same people we need in the MBA category to help ensure veterans get employment, because they need to have exposure to the corporate side. And without going into too much details on MBA, over 80% of people get their jobs because of their network. We found that junior sailors and junior officers usually exit the junior enlisted and officers usually exit the Navy without knowing, or the military, without knowing the value of the network. And so that's important. We're going to teach them the value of the network and how to land on the feet in the civilian world. Those are the same relationships that we use for LF Week, but they're also the same relationships that we use in our new high school career development program that's happening in education. So now instead of having 5 databases of different relationships, we have one database of relationships that can be leveraged depending on where they want to be aligned. So much stronger. Support for campaign outreach, donor cultivation, grant writing. That's Kyle's department is going to be focused in those areas. What is the projected return on investment of that? Then releases some general funds. Every time we raise some funds, grant funds, restricted funds, that actually releases some of the general funds to go towards things like operations, accounting, security, those types of areas. Up to 2x in the admissions revenue is our goal, eventually up to 6 times our event and food and beverage revenue, 3 times support of our community works, 2 times veterans served, and 2 times youth served. Those are objectives in the ROI of those investments. That venue is about 560 people seated as a seated venue, almost 2.5 times the capacity of our existing venue. Even if we waive the fees, picking up the bar revenue and the food revenue and having a catering kitchen in there is going to be a huge win that will generate a significant amount of revenue. Now, I know I'm talking about revenue. Look, I know we're a nonprofit. Nonprofits are charities or 501c3s. I get it. I hear you. The difference between 501c, or difference between a nonprofit and profit is where the profit goes. And a for-profit, the profit goes into shareholders, and the nonprofit, the profit goes right back into investing in the organization with greater impact to the constituency. So If we don't have revenue and we don't have profit, we don't have an organization. We're not gonna be able to pay for power and lights and rent and keep this ship afloat, maintenance, everything that needs to happen. So the ROI in the revenue generation, the continued growth allows us to invest in continuing to sustain the organization with an eventual objective to have a sizable endowment. So I would love to see something like the maintenance of the ship funded off of $100 million endowment that would fund about $5 million a year in maintenance for the ship. And we will never have any concern with lives. But that is a very, very long objective. That's like building social capital with LA disaster resiliency and recovery collective. This is what the concert was the other night. It is actually a community pillar, which is probably been undefined, but it's home for the first responder training, community support. What's called DISCA, Defense Support Civilian Agencies Planning, which happens during Fleet Week, which is the use of military resources in response to major disasters. By the way, that is one of the primary reasons I got called back from DC with a 5-hour notice, as I was sitting on the couch and got a call asking me where I was after we'd been on the ground for 5 hours, and I needed to get back to LA to be in the EOC. So, turned around and flew nonstop. What a day and a half later. We have an MOU with LA Emergency Management Department as the official nonprofit for resilience recovery and fundraising. The collective is really about building a more resilient LA through relationships, resources, and knowledge to effectively assist in disaster recovery. So right now we're building a network, and we mobilize a network, and we enhance resiliency. Again, this is all. So we're building the network. Our job is to build a network and cultivate the network. And the chairman is Bruce Craig, and the EMD job is to do the resource matching. Now, what does that mean, resource matching? Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience in the middle of the fires, because I was there, is there was a massive amount of donations coming in. People donating air purifiers, clothes, food, whatever it may be. Massive amounts of donations coming in, and some of them needed. It just made it more difficult. But when those donations come in, the first thing that happened was the city said, "Oh my gosh, where do we store this? We have no room to store this. We need to go get a warehouse. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? We need to get this on the ground." Okay. When I looked at them, I said, "Okay, stop. The city's never going to store them. The city's not in the business to store it. The city's not in the business to collect this stuff. What the city is in the business of is taking that network and matching NGOs, nonprofits that can deliver these goods on the ground." So if you got 60,000 air purifiers, which is a real scenario, if you got 60,000 air purifiers that need to reach the ground, if you take the 60,000 air purifiers, you can take them on, you can put them in a warehouse, you can wait and see if you can get them on the ground and hire a bunch of staff and deliver them on the ground, and that may take about 2 or 3 months. Or you take 60,000 air purifiers, you can call it the Salvation Army, you can call it Goodwill, you can call it Red Cross, or any of these that are already out on the ground, and say, "Hey, can you deliver 60,000 air purifiers on the ground?" And they say, "Absolutely, send them to us." About 10 seconds later, you just figure out how to do it, and then they get out there within a day or two, and you provide an opportunity for that nonprofit to meet its metrics and objectives, and you were able to help the people quicker than you would today doing it alone. So that's what this is. So our job is to build that network so we can cross facilitate those resources and the delivery of those goods onto the out to the people. Well, EMD does that resource matching, which we've been working with EMD to set up that process of doing so. Next slide. Oh, Fleet Week. I'm going to talk about this slide. So Fleet Week. Ships come, they go, ships come, they go, ships come, they go. Leaders come, they go. We had a chief of naval operations coming here until she got fired. Right now, they're planning the Viceno's calendar up through April, so we don't know if she's going to show up or not. But it may change Monday morning, it may change Tuesday morning. Ships may swap out, they may swap in. But I will tell you, I hope never to see another aircraft carrier again in my life. Yeah. Although I did tell the Navy every 4 or 5 years would be nice to have an aircraft carrier. Aircraft carriers bring media and interest, but they bring challenges. Right? They do a lot of problems. Their capacity did not increase whatsoever. The capacity of an aircraft carrier is about the same as 3 surface ships. So for tour capacity. So that didn't change anything, just changed interest and drove a lot of backup, and it's still driving a lot of heartache in the way we can lines, and a lot of that is going right now. It's like a one deck project update. I think everybody's been watching this one eagerly with the artificial deck, which is thankfully not tracked, so we're not going to see that buckle up. It's more of a coating. It's being pretty proven in yachts and cruise ships. Mike worked on researching this several years ago, going to a yacht show, seeing different options, figure out what the best options are. It's not cheap stuff. We're probably be into it about 1.03 million at the end of the day. For what's right above us, when we're running over 1 million. 750K of that is funded by the state of Iowa. So we're trying to get it all done by the end of June, which is the end of the fiscal year in the state of Iowa. And I've already been out to the state of Iowa. Last week I was in the state of Iowa in negative 25-degree wind chill. Trying to secure another $750,000 in the state of Iowa. We're already in the governor's budget. So we're hoping to get substance support the next time we're out there, third week of March, fourth week of March. So we have House support, governor support at this point for another appropriation. This is big because what we saw on Queen Mary and some of the other ships, it's not just the hull, it is the water leaking from above. It's causing corrosion from the inside out. So then corrosion from the inside out. So we want to try to prevent the corrosion from the inside out. Now, one of the folks that probably heard me say this, I'm going to say it once again here, for those that may not have heard me say this. I agree with you. Our decks when people come aboard are ugly. The plywood is ugly. Like, you have no disagreement from me. It is absolutely the ugliest thing on the planet. We have made a choice as an organization that just because it's ugly does not mean it gets the grease. Because that deck when people walk aboard is on 1.5" STS armor, and I don't know about you, but 1/2" steel and thinner usually corrodes quicker than 1.5" armor. Anybody want to dispute me on that? So that's why we're paying attention to a lot of the thinner steel, because if that thinner steel goes, the project stops being a replacement of deck and it starts becoming replacement of steel. And it becomes a replacement of steel, and that becomes a very different project. It becomes a much more costly project. So I think we probably have 150, 200 years to get to the SDS. We may have 10 years to get to the 1/2". So that's why we're paying attention to those areas that have the thinner steel right now. That may not be the beauty, but I prefer not to put lipstick on the pig. I prefer to keep the pig alive. Next slide. Don't bias continue. I don't know what I meant by this. Just skip it. Pavilion 85% design completion at this point. Work is at 50%. We've received 9% payment from the state of 5.8 million that's in the bank, and it's making interest right now. We were able to convince the state to not do a reimbursement to give us all the money so we can put it in the bank and make about $150,000 interest on it, which adds right back into the bill. Soil improvement foundation challenges have slowed. There is some challenges that Mike and Larry have been addressing. Figure out how we're going to do pilings and what kind of pilings we're going to do, and it turns out our original ground. Do not address the noise of driving pumps. It only addresses the noise of a jackhammer and a backhammer. So it looks like we're going to have to do a supplemental and even potentially. But the board is working to not. We already in conversations with building safety, hoping to submit permits in February, which we did not do. We're delayed still another month. On the building front, we were informed last month that the people we were going to buy the building from are increasing the cost of the building, the steel, by 10% because of the tariffs, and another 10% in the middle of March. And so we are now looking, they haven't gone into engineering yet on the building, so we're looking at changing the building manufacturer. Now, this is a pre-engineered building. Frankly, I mean, to be frank with you, we could probably get a foundation in 4 to 6 weeks, and we can get the building up in about 8 to 12 weeks in a rush. So we can move pretty quick because it is pre-engineered. But we're going to have to really hopefully get this buttoned up on the spill, otherwise we're going to have to go back to the state and bank. So give us an extension. Also in negotiations with the court for another $4 million towards this building. With the plaza right in front of it that we were talking about, 3.5 million short, but several dollars to finishing that out. So next slide. That is a moving ocean.
Where you read the thing from the cruise book.
Oh. Can anybody read the 1950s Earth cruise book? Like, what am I supposed to do here every night? Because they're floating foam.
It's inspirational, just do it.
Okay. So have you read the 1950s era cruise book? It's such a simple very good. I put this up in the 10K presentation. But I think it really kind of notates what we do here. So men who follow the sea have feelings about their ships that landsmen cannot understand, for a ship is a hard mistress. She carries you off to distant lands, far from those you love. She demands unceasing attention day and night, fair weather and foul. She keeps you up half the night on watch, and drags you to pre-dawn battle stations. She bakes you in the fire room and freezes you on life buoy watch. She's a perverse creature with little softness to her. But she has another side that comes out on certain evenings when the sun is set and the soft glow of twilight hangs over the sea. You sit topside in the cool night air and spin tales with your shipmates in the quiet hush of dawn. Beneath your feet, you feel the faint throb of her powerful engines, driving her sleek hull through the long rollers. And now and then she flings a careless breath of spray into the air to mist across her face. Somewhere nearby, a guitar strums softly, George. Above you towers the massive foremast, its bulk softened by the night, shadowy against the stars. When she's in that sort of mood, you wouldn't trade her with all her reasonable ways for anything else in the world. That's how we feel about Ida. We polished her, painted her, nursed her through 1,000 troubles, and she hasn't thanked us yet. But she's taken us places, showed us things, and made us a lot of friends we never have met. In taking the good with the bad, she's been the best ship in the United States Navy. So I thought that was a pretty good, when I ran across it, I thought that was a pretty good kind of summary. Obviously, we're not going to see, we're not in the Navy, but you really have a highlights and summary of what everybody feels a connection here. In that many of us are willing to sacrifice ourselves and burn ourselves out to do what we do every day. But that's not sustainable long term. So I think it's, for me, it's building that capacity of the team, helping the team be successful, invest in the right places, trim the areas that are not successful, plan accordingly, out towards the future. I think that's an important part. We were having 2 conversations this week where somebody says, we should do this now, and we'll change everything. It's like, just because I like the idea doesn't mean I'm going to want something else. Let's start talking about 18 months down the road or 24 months down the road, because we need it back from you. Or the answer that we had for the first 12 years, well, we should do this, but we have no money. Well, we still don't have a lot of money. We have nothing. We have pennies now. We made some dollars. But that does not mean we should not look at putting in the queue 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road. Because on the development fundraising side, we can't expect development to turn in 1 week and raise money in 1 week. We're going to do this now. I'll go raise $1 million next week. It's not going to happen. So we have to start looking at a queue for the long term and what our priorities are and how that fund fills and when we come into start looking further down the road. And that will see our growth over the next 10 years. And maybe 15, 20 years. But let's start being strategic, smart, doing the right thing. And most of all, I think the most important thing for me is let's embrace each other. Let's realize we're all humans. We're not perfect. I walk back and I hear people complaining about other people all the time. It's like, we're together in this. We're together in this, and we may not agree, but we are together trying to accomplish amazing things. And let's accept each other for what we are and the strengths and weaknesses we each have. So, any comments? Questions? Come on, Rich, I know you have questions. None? Go for it.
Yeah, I saw on one of your early slides, the investments from PBC and American Scenic.
Mhm.
I'm unaware of who American's.
American Scenic is our contractor at the National Museum of Surface Navy. We have a tendency, as an organization, written in our DNA, which is good and bad. Written in our DNA, we try to find vendors that want to be partners that we work with, and then we hook them in, and we try to get them to donate things all the time. It's kind of an institutionalized behavior for those of us on the management team and leadership team and the fundraising team. American Scenic is you can't say well-known because they don't want to be well-known. They're prior to Disney Imagineers and they've worked on many projects that you would be aware of. Rise of the Resistance is one of them. Some of the Vegas experiences, Disneyland experiences, Universal Studios experiences, they're experience creators. They create experiences, they patent experiences. They're usually behind the scenes. They don't want to be well known because there's another brand that has it in front of them. And those experiences, I can tell you, Rise of Resistance was $1.3 billion. I think there's a land they were working on now is 1.5 billion or something.
The normal Disney contract that they see is between 600 and 900.
And 609. And so we got American Scenic and another partner of theirs. We hooked the owners in and we got them committed. And this is now the passion project. But that doesn't mean that we'd be able to do it for free. They still have staffs and actual costs. So we're putting 1.8 million towards American Scenic for great ships, by the way, art direction, some different things. But it's probably $5 to $10 million project. They're giving to us for 1.8 million.
Great.
So.
We've diversified tour quite a bit over 13 years. Can you expand upon where we launched it at? What percentage of our income is coming from tour as a department? I know Kyle's bringing a lot of donations in,
Yeah.
legacy and so forth.
So tour is you got general admission on the tour front, then you got the add-on tours and the tour front. And add-on tours have really significantly added to the revenue and actually added to the experience. Remember, we're not the Battleship aficionado experience. When Battleship aficionado comes on board or they're a museum ship aficionado, to admit we are the worst experience on the plane. I'll be the first to admit that. We are not the experience for the aficionado. Go to another show. But once again, because I like to fish in the 93% pond, 7% pond, right? For the civilians, I hear it endlessly and look at the reviews. People think we have more open than anybody else. We have less open than anybody else. Opening more does not mean that that just means you're gonna maintain more. You're gonna spend more. Having another ship means you're gonna spend more. So if we focus, we provide an experience that is somebody doesn't get lost in, it's not a maze, and then we create those add-on experiences like the President's Cabin. I mean, when I realized we let people trudge through there, beat it up, don't know what's going on there, have no idea what the story is. They're at a bathtub they have no idea what the history of that bathtub is, has no idea who's in there, and we're wearing carpet out. Hundreds of thousands of people. It's like, how stupid are we? When you turn around and create President's Tour, and it's quality and it's $10 a head, and you're charging people for the quality, they're enjoying it, they're experiencing it and learning. When you look at that, and you add career tracks, and you look at all the departments that may exist on a ship, from admin to gunnery to communications to engineering, so on and so forth, that's where the career tracks come in. So when you get the engineering tour and the gunnery tour, what we're doing is we're rebranding that and reformatting that and actually looking at how we tell the stories. The 3 sparklers and the firework, that's what we're starting to look at. Instead of just haphazardly throwing everything at the wall, how do we strategically tell that story and share that story and what that may be? Now, that doesn't mean we're gonna have everything ready on day one, but you can see that is multiple years of things. I mean, you could have an entire maintenance experience, frankly. People want to know how you maintain it. I'll say it was a little bored, they're gonna be part of it. So you could create things that people would actually be able to be part of it. That's not this year. But it gives an opportunity for people to spend more than an hour and a half. It creates a 3-hour, 5-hour, 10-hour, multi-day, so on and so forth. Come back and immerse and become part of what they're doing. And frankly, we'll probably feed into building our crew as well.
But back to the original question, the economics of it.
Economics.
What percentage of our income is coming?
Revenue is probably about 35%.
Okay.
For most museums, it's about 90%. It's about 35%. And so it's not as big as I wish it was, but we're also in the San Pedro waterfront. So, hate to say it. San Pedro waterfront, I mean, even those of you that were here 3-4 Saturdays ago when somebody decided to party across the street, fire a gun in the air, like, that doesn't help any of our scenarios. Yeah, if we're across from Disneyland, it'd be a different deal. If we're on San Diego waterfront, it'd be a different deal. Location. If I look back 12 years ago, how ignorant I was in believing LA would just be some kind of turnkey thing, or how ignorant I thought everybody wanted to see a battleship. I mean, those are the things I was lost over 12, 13 years ago. The reality of that is very different.
Remember back in Richmond, back when I very first started, we were talking about this whole experience of coming aboard as a sailor. So it's neat to see it come
Coming
back.
its way around.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's coming its way around, I think, in a new, probably better way than. Other questions? Comments? Challenges? Or gestures?
Give your money.
Let me off. I know Kyle's gonna pull the basket out, everybody can see us around.
Is there money in the basket?
And probably have money, right? Once the next thing comes around, we'll put money in. That's sad. And,
well, I was wondering about National Museum build out and what we're actually expecting within the crawl, walk, run scenario for October.
So crawl walk, I haven't heard that before, but I understand what that is. It's the crawl walk run, I love it. Skim, swim, deep dive is what I'm used to. So I like that crawl walk run, and we start using it.
Make it up. Everybody's been using it for
Have
years.
you guys been using it?
We start by crawling is opening great ships.
Oh, okay, all right, so it's a different philosophy. We're gonna try to do as much as we can. But I don't, we're gonna be building on this forever. We're kind of building a foundation is what we're doing, a lot of this foundation. Like the screens in boot camp, maybe foundation, we may only have one piece of content, but we can build on that content. The goal is to be able to, I think in this phase one, the goal is to put the foundation in place. And then endlessly program content onto it.
Obviously, I'm just trying to get some sense of if there's any specific goal yet
Oh, yeah, there is specific goals.
for October.
Oh, yeah, there absolutely is.
Forging Sailor, tree experience, Forging Sailor, great ships, and the teaser for the cutaway.
Yeah.
Those are the deliverables.
Those are the deliverables, and reprogramming maybe one or two of the tour experiences is a deliverable. Those are the deliverables. It is tight, it's our push.
There's a question in the chat.
Marty Golden is asking if it is time for another entrance fee.
Why?
No, I don't feel it is because inflation, the economy is a little weaker than I think is out in the media at this point. We saw, we hired, Paul Roosevelt, which hopefully you guys all know Paul. He's just as marketing director. I told him he may be a minor celebrity here, so if he hasn't become a minor celebrity, make sure he gets a little.
Thank you.
It's not being on the spotlight.
It's not like I has a bathtub on a ship.
All you are is a marketing guy, so you have to be the spotlight. But you know, I would bring him up because when we put out a resume to get resume submissions for that job, we had about 200 of them in probably 2 days. 6 months ago, we would have been lucky to get 2 of them. Now, thankfully, the person I wanted responded to the rest of the request, and that's the way. But we did have a lot of qualified candidates. We're already seeing in any of the jobs that we have is a lot more qualified candidates than we saw just 6 or 9 months ago. So inflation's a very real number. Employment market, I believe, is probably unemployment may actually be upwards of 6+%. In the California budget, they're showing increase in employment this year. And so I think we're kind of on a little increase fees right now is probably not a smart move. I think we're right at the moment.
You know, just a comment, by structuring the organization the way we are, your revenues are less fickle than if you were depending on the gate alone. So by necessity, we depend on program revenue and donation grant funding. But that tends to be a tad more stable than gate. So it's just something to think about.
This is good. Thank you for keeping us informed on a regular basis.
I'm happy to do so. I'd like to do something at night, you know, like a reception or something too.
This is great.
Thank you. Doug,
Uh,
and Mike.
the subject of what are we gonna roll out in October, Dave alluded to it. When will we be able to see something that we can share with the public, both on your platforms and one-on-one with other people?
I'm ready for that.
Would that be on Rand and Dave's?
That would be a hall thing. This would be a hall thing here.
I need, my question is, if it isn't forward facing, we can't have everyone
You're talking about promotion.
ready to be here.
Captain Sequest also has offered me GQ.
I think you.
Sequest offered a proposition.
There will be internal briefings before we have external communications.
So for probably your question for literature promoting it probably months out from when we'll get probably 6 weeks or so, I would think from when.
Does that also involve getting more up on the BBC websites?
Oh, yeah, that is a big project you're already on right now.
Okay, because I get comments from people I talk to on the radio, they go to our website, they got more information about the ship than we're able to find on the primary.
Yeah,
It's disappointing.
it's not gonna fix overnight,
No,
but
understood.
it's something on, it is something on us in the marketing team's plan right now.
This is something I think that we've gone back and forth, that American CA team about for a year and a half or 2 years, is we have this vision. How do you, A, make it come alive physically, and B, how do you tell that story? Because maybe describing what bringing it alive is, the literal, is not what is going to attract the interest.
Okay,
And so being able to go through and really you have this, the sell sheet, if you will, what does this look like, evolve a dozen, 15 times, because it's just not right. And we're at the point now where I think we're at this cusp of having that delivery be just right. And so you'll see even on the website right now, there are numerous of the exhibits that are going under these new iterations of the webpage. So if you go on the great ships, for example, that's kind of the starting point of like where we really launched and nailed how we're telling the story. The next phase is going to be talking about the individuals, the sailors, and so on. So as you move through some of these other examples that Jonathan's talking about for the exhibits, you're going to see those web pages updated.
This is the surface Navy site, not
Right.
the PVC site.
So
so right now, the main bullet we have up that is forward facing is Shatinsky and Joe Montana's 7 or 8 minute presentation of, hey, this is what's coming. Do we have something to fill between that in October? And when will that happen? You're saying, when?
Yes, we're good now.
We're not there.
We're not.
Thank you.
We'll be ready to promote probably about 4 to 6 weeks out. We're running by the senior bands.
Thank you.
So. My name is George.
You can take
My
my.
whole, yeah, I saw his hand first.
Okay.
Don't you think it should be hook, sparkle, firework, rather than just sparkle?
Could be, but it's sparkle, firework. I won't tell you what else I was told. But I realized I was actually doing the lineup when I heard 5 different people.
Especially with the young generation, which is TikTok generation,
Yeah,
the hook is important.
yep. That's where the big bang comes in.
We have good storytellers around here. We'll get you some good stuff, don't worry.
Okay, so now I know this is, we're talking about the future, right? So.
Yeah.
Phase 2 of the National Museum, okay? Give me a sparkler and a centerfold about what we could look forward to with that. Is there any vision or any?
Is there any vision? No, there's a lot of vision. We could raise about 100 million. You'd see all kinds of cool stuff.
Because I don't want to just tell me the story. I want to know if there's really anything that we could look forward to regarding that.
For the next 10 years.
Inspire
10 to 15 years.
the.
What we're trying to do is open this experience down app that sets the stage to plan to program the entire ship, including what the IET team is doing on the CC main plot thing they're working on right now for next year, including we've been in conversations on a 3D theater, a full 3D theater with a huge LED panel. That's about $1.5 million, $2 million for that. The reality is this. We're not building what we wanted to build in phase 1 because we didn't raise enough money to build what we want to build in phase 1. And now we're running out of time, and I said we're just going to build what we need to build, and that's what we're building at this point. With the hopeful, with the Because a lot of folks still don't know what the Surface Navy Museum even is and why that matters. With the hopeful that once we get this open, people go, I want to be part of this. So it's kind of a, I hate to say it, need it, but it's kind of like a little bit of a, we're gonna do this instead of waiting. But we're gonna show people where to do that. So there's a lot of vision. There's a,
Cause to me, there's potential for the big boom up forward, you know, cause there's more space, it's a more sweeping panorama.
that's where we want to. We want to do the big piers and everything up there. We'll get there. Go ahead.
Maybe that
Huh?
question, talk about target audience here. Focusing them out. And do that make pop, do they, you know, institutions, like all sites, got built in audience there.
The amount of,
Well, you know. To get the word out.
the amount of class that we put that in over 12 years is probably equal to several thousands of hours at swing. I've emailed, I've had conversations with Royal Caribbean, I've emailed Royal Caribbean, I've conversations with Princess, I've emailed Princess. Every single year we'll talk to them. There's lobbyists, we'll talk, executive VPs. We had said, will you put the thing to do, can you do a kind of experience? Can you go from them? We said, where are we at on this? And then they disappear. And then we follow up again, you know, disappears. So what is our thought on that? Well, it is an embark and disembark port primarily. A lot of those folks are going straight to the airport. Sometimes we pick up some of them, we pick up a lot of stopover days. And so what is your thought on it? I said, you know what? Let's put luggage storage in. Because if it's store luggage over there, we can store luggage here, so let's put luggage storage in, it's going right now. And let's generate these parking there, we often have luggage storage in. And so that's more real. Yes, there's been since Davy arrived. The cruise lines have not been very nice participating partners, including we've had the Norwegian president on board, we had the Norwegian executive vice president on board, we've had a lot of execs involved in the conversation. And then it just is there.
So do you think the reason is that the Iowa has nothing to offer to these cruise lines?
I think the reason is it's an embark and disembark port.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to. It's an embark and disembark port. We're going rushing to the airport. We're rushing to get on the ship from the airport.
Or having to manage their luggage, so let's see like a luggage storage.
Or manage your luggage. That is what it comes down to, is an embark, disembark port. Because we do see when there's a stopover, we see 3 or 4 other people come over. So.
Okay, Jonathan. The increase in cruise ships has been dramatic. Right now, I think we're averaging on our busy months, 24 to 26 cruise ships. 1 or 2 are the destination cruise ships. What we mean by that is that they actually come to LA to go do things. He's exactly right. They embark and disembark. They just want to get in and out. A lot of them don't even know that we exist until they get here, and they kind of look at it and go, forgive my language, oh shit, there's a battleship there. They don't have a lot of time. So I agree with you.
I'm gonna go catch an earlier flight, if you guys don't mind, because my wife has been traveling to Boise, Idaho. And I have not seen my wife in a week and a half or so, so I get to see her tonight. I'm gonna come over here and back to her. She leaves tomorrow morning. So if you guys don't mind, I wouldn't mind doing it. So get the hell out of here.